Hello and welcome to the Training Academy, the series where I provide info and tips and tricks for players of Rainbow Six Siege. I'm Xiaoling, and in this episode we'll be talking about some not so obvious tips and tricks. Tip number 1, let's talk about rappelling. Yes, rappelling, not rappelling. It's great that you can rappel up the sides of buildings and you almost feel like Spider-Man, but you're not. The enemy team can see the rappel line. Make sure it's not crossing over the windows, keep it to the side, lean in or come down inverted. The position of the line will let the enemy know exactly where you are, so keep it out of sight. On a side note, when rappelling into windows, don't forget that you can aim in any direction, not only straight forward. Tip number 2, breaching charges and surfaces. So there are 3 kinds of surfaces in Rainbow Six Siege: breachable, semi-destructible and non-destructible. When using a breaching charge, the color of the light is an indicator of what type of surface you are about to try and breach. If the light is red, you will be unable to place the charge. If it's orange, it's a semi-destructible wall or floor, and breaching it will allow you to shoot through it. If it's green, it's completely breachable, which will allow you entry into the room via the resulting hole. Tip number 3, spotting with cameras and drones. So I mentioned in my beginner tips video the importance of cameras and drones. However, since this is somewhat of a more advanced tutorial, I will add that relaying the enemy's position to your team without using the spotting function of the cameras and drones is the preferred method. The enemy team, or at least the enemy, won't get the notification that they are being watched and that their position is being given away. However, using this method will require some kind of communication with your team. Tip number 4. I spoke about the basics of fortifications and barricades in the last video. Today, we'll talk about line of sight and barricades. Now, I see many new players try to close every conceivable doorway off with barricades. They start with the rooms that they're in, and they move outward, closing every doorway they can find. Don't do this. Pay attention to where your teammates are and what sectors they are covering. Don't put up barricades in places that will obscure their lines of sight to areas they are defending. This is especially important when playing Castle. Consider carefully where you put Castle's barricades, or any barricades for that matter, in regard to objectives. Do not put barriers between bomb sites. All this does is make it harder for your team to move back and forth between these sites, and a Castle barricade blocking entry from one bomb site to another can be the difference between winning and losing. Barricades can also cause the enemy team to be more cautious. They tend to expect traps or ambushes when barricades are present in locations that are not near the objective. I've seen players who roam start setting up barricades in all kinds of strange places. The smaller your footprint, the less likely it is that the enemy is going to suspect an ambush. Sometimes not using a barricade is the best course of action. Tip number 5, grouping. When you're playing the defenders, it's not really a very good idea to all stay in one location. I've seen this countless times. The defenders team have all barricaded themselves into one room and wait. This is a recipe for disaster. Spread out a bit, have a roamer or two. Don't wait it out in the most predictable locations. Ever heard of the term fish in a barrel? I've seen the same thing with attackers, where they all move in one big blob. Then all it takes is the guy in front not to see a trip mine or a radio bomb, and it's toast for pretty much everyone who is near him. I've seen entire teams get wiped out like this, or get shot one by one because all the enemy has to do is shoot in the general direction of the blob, and they're guaranteed to kill a few people. Don't be predictable. Moving in groups is sometimes necessary, but so is splitting up. And that sums it up for today's video. If you haven't already seen them, you can check out some of my other tip videos. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like, subscribe and share this with your friends. And as usual, if you have any questions or comments, you can leave them in the section below. I've been Xiaoling. Until next time.